Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all are having a fabulous Thursday. Thank you for joining me as I take us on a little adventure to talk about Review 360 and to give you an overview of our Review 360 platform here at Pearson. So the goal for today's session is just to give you a quick overview of Review 360, highlighting the purposes and the uses and the unique features of the platform. My name is Lori Jensen, and I am your host today. I'm joining you all today and most days from my home office in Iowa, where we just had about a foot of snow over the last 24 hours. Just a little bit about me. I am a senior product manager at Pearson. I specialize in the behavior and social emotional learning domain. I have over 15 years of experience in creating impactful educational tools. I am really passionate about fostering supportive school environments. I am a proud mama of two very energetic kiddos. So I bring both professional expertise and a lot of personal inspiration into the work that I do. As you can imagine, when I'm not busy working on educational tools, I manage a delightful amount of chaos in my personal home, which provides me with all that inspiration and a few gray hairs while we're at it. But again, thanks for joining me. And if you have any questions, feel free to throw those into the Q&A, and I'm happy to answer as many questions as I can today. So at a high level, Review 360 is a platform that supports the implementation of a systematic MTSS process for problem solving, data-based decision making, and equitable practices, okay? In addition, it supports the development of teachers, professional skills through our professional development that's embedded into the platform. It also enhances communication with parents or guardians on students' progress towards behavioral and social emotional growth, okay? So that's our value prop at a high level. And now I want to show you what that really means in this picture here on your screen. So Review 360 underpins all of the tiers of the MTSS process, okay? So we support the core or tier 1 students, the core tier is meant to benchmark and support all students and all staff, right? So we have universal screening, allowing for quick identification of students who may be at risk for behavioral or academic concerns. Incidents, we do an incident management component that can be tracked to find patterns in staff and student responses. We also offer embedded professional development, which those opportunities are built directly into Review 360. And then, of course, there's the tier 2 or the next tier, which involves targeted assessments and interventions, okay? So these components are going to give more support to those students who maybe have been identified as at risk or students that we're just kind of watching, right? So there's interventions are going to include specific overall goals, and we can track progress on behavior plans. We also offer things like the check-in and check-out intervention, and then there's a referral process as well. Then Review 360 also supports your tier 3 kiddos or the individualized tier students. And so the third tier is going to give the most individualized intensive support. So students may be referred for a diagnostic assessment, which would provide more in-depth information than a universal screener. Goals can be individualized by student and put into progress monitoring plans. You can do an FBA at an individual level as well. So as you can see, Review 360 sits underneath all of those features and supports the entire MTSS process, okay? I'm going to dive a little bit into some of the key features of Review 360 today, so I'll just kick that off and talk a little bit about Review 360 as a whole. So Review 360 as a whole is a web-based system with a configurable dashboard. So what that means is on your screen, there's all these little boxes, and these boxes can be moved or switched around, and they can be customized based off of the user that's logged into the platform. So you can resize the boxes, you can add more boxes or widgets, and each person can have a unique view. So it doesn't have to be set at an account level. So as a principal, if I'm interested in seeing aggregated data and different types of data of what something like a teacher might be interested in seeing, right? And so the teachers can have their own unique view, admins can have their own unique view. It's extremely flexible. The next thing I want to talk a little bit about is in Review 360, we have 25 professional development courses with multiple sections in each that cover a variety of topics, okay? So they cover things like intellectual disabilities or bullying, classroom management. And so the professional development courses have been built with all tiers of the MTSS process in mind. So if you have as a teacher that might need some help with classroom management strategies or techniques, you can assign that person the classroom management course. Similarly, if there is somebody who needs some refresher or some ideas about supporting students with intellectual disabilities, you can assign that PD course as well. Okay, so the courses span topics from general education to special education, right? Connecting all of our educators and our system together. And it's all included in Review 360's course subscription. So you don't have to add additional professional development opportunities. We include it at the price of the course subscription, okay? You can assign PD courses to select users, to whole groups of users. You can assign due dates. There is a certificate of completion. There's a lot to unpack with our professional development. And again, it's included in the price of Review 360. And of course, schools all have different needs, and one size doesn't fit all when it comes to behavior, school climate, and social emotional learning, right? So we have an array of universal screeners to support the identification of students at tier 2 and tier 3 risk levels. So in Review 360, we have several universal screeners that you can use or add into your system. And that's because various states or districts have different regulations when it comes to these non-academic screeners, right? And so we want to make sure that we have something that might work for your school, district, or state, depending on the regulations that you have around non-academic screeners. It's important to note, of course, these screeners do not diagnose things like ADHD or autism or EBD, right? Emotional behavior disorder. But there are indicators, such as the indicator on the BASC-3 BEST, that can show if further evaluation might be recommended, right? So oftentimes when a student's being evaluated for something like ADHD or autism or other concerns that might be going on, they use a broadband assessment called the BASC-3. And so the BEST is the precursor to that, right? And it's certainly something that can be used for all students. Okay. Review 360 also offers an array of evidence-based interventions. As an example, in Review 360, we have a check-in and check-out plan, which is commonly used because of the research base to support the positive impact for students. It's an excellent intervention when the function of the behavior is attention-based, okay? It's also quick and easy and requires minimal amounts of time, either before or after school, between teachers and students, okay? It provides a predictable check-in for the student in their day. It increases the frequency of positive adult contact for a student that is structured to encourage and motivate and support the student. And that is just one example of an intervention support that's included in Review 360. So here on the screen, you can see a screenshot of what setting that up might look like. We have 3 sets of rules that are split up into different categories. First one being responsibility rules, respectful rules, and safety rules. And so you can choose the rules that are most appropriate for that particular student, right? And again, in addition to check in and check out, there are additional intervention strategies embedded into our behavior tracking plans that we'll cover in just a minute. We also have social emotional learning interventions or social skills, skill builder interventions as well. So those are also embedded into the platform. We also have a behavior tracking tool in Review360 that allows for a deep analysis of classroom behavior, okay? So in Review360, there is a feature called the Classroom Management Plan that teachers can put together a management plan for their classroom, right? And it can be added to help communicate to guardians and students what the classroom expectations are. So that way, teachers can set what their classroom expectations are, and when the expectations aren't met, they can communicate or they know what corrective steps are next, right? Because they've documented it in their classroom management plan. So then, when the expectations aren't met, they're able to document what's going on through our incident tracking feature, right? So for step 1 is we set the classroom management plan, and then step 2 would be to do the incident tracking plan or the incident management component, right? So for Review360, there's an incident management feature that is flexible and customizable, if you will, that allows accounts to determine how to route incidents throughout their organization. Meaning, when something happens in a classroom, right, what level of severity is that to qualify for an office referral? And you can set that all up right in Review360. So at an administration level, you can determine for these types of incidents, they would be routed for an office referral. For this kind of thing, that would be handled in the classroom, right? We have a few buckets that incidents can fall into. There's in-class administrative review and discipline. And within those, we can customize them or adapt them for your particular school or district's code of conduct, okay? So there's some flexibility in how we set and route those up, okay? And in Review360, we have a robust reporting system that will then allow you to look at those incidents to help support equitable practices in the district, okay? So we have reporting that would show or highlight the inequities when reviewing the data, the output of the incident management piece. We also have, I talked a little bit about the reporting. On this screen, it'll show you the number of incident reports that we have, okay? So in here, you can pull reports to see if staff is unfairly applying suspensions or if they're unfairly targeting particular behaviors, right? And you're able to see that through our reporting and then address the issues with the specific staff members. Maybe there's issues by location, and so you need to work on making a particular location safer, or maybe through the reporting you see, you know, right around 11 a.m., if our kiddos haven't had outside recess for whatever reason, we seem to see a spike in incidents, right? And so you're able to identify that by looking at these reports. Okay. In addition to helping address some of the concerns that might be happening within a school system, Review360 also provides the evidence needed to document and fulfill requirements by various state departments of education for suspensions, expulsions, and school incidents, okay? So oftentimes we have customers who will pull these reports for mandatory reporting purposes. And every state, of course, is a little bit different. And so if there's a report that folks need that we haven't built yet, we encourage you to let us know, so that's something that we can get added for you. So we talked a lot about all the data, right? And all the things that you can put into Review360. You can do universal screening, you can document incidents, right? And so you have all this data trickling in. And now the big question is, what are you going to do with the data, right? So oftentimes I say, it's only going to be as good as what you put into it, right? And if you're gonna track the data, if you're gonna watch the data, then there's something we need to do with that data, right? And so Review360 provides that what's next component. And we do that through our progress monitoring, okay? So in Review360, we have progress monitoring tools to support students in Tier 2 and Tier 3 and students who have special education needs. We have a number of progress monitoring tools to support students. There are 9 different progress monitoring plans that can be used across your school or district. You would have access in Review360 to all 9. And that's because each plan is targeted for a different cohort of students, okay? So some of the plans that we have are typically used with kiddos who are in special education, and some are used for kiddos who are in general education. Some are used to track behavior objectives, some are used to track classroom rules. And so they all target something just a little bit different. On this next screen that I'm going to put up, I'm just going to put this here for folks to take a peek at it. Feel free to do a quick screenshot if it's something that you want to look at later. But these are the 9 different plans that we have in Review360, okay? All right, in Review360, we also have a seamless district communication through the platform. And we talked a little bit about this in the incident routing, right? How you can determine at a district or an account level how to route specific incidents, right? So you don't miscommunicate across the district or across the school, right? But we also offer a refer a student for services component in the product as well. And this is something that's used potentially when you have to refer a student to maybe a school psychologist or a social worker for some reason, right? Typically, we're referring a student who is not responding to current strategies put into place by progress monitoring tools. Or maybe the student is just having a hard time at home, and so we would like them to talk with the counselor or another individual at the school, right? And so through this referral process, teachers are able to refer a student for services so that the recipient of the referral can take a look at the case and see what's going on, right? Um, Oftentimes, when a student is referred for services, administrators can review it, and then typically there's a team, right, an RTI team that will review the referrals together and then decide kind of how to route that particular student. So again, this is a great way to just document and route referrals through the district. Just a couple more features here, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about our various universal screeners. So up until this point, I've talked a lot about referring for services, right? Or kind of that connection between the general education space and the special education space. I'm going to talk a little bit more quickly about some of more of the, what I would call like the clinical components of Review360, okay? So in Review360, we have the functional behavioral assessment. The main goal of the FBA is to identify the underlying causes of problematic behaviors. Oftentimes, this is done through observation or data collection by a school psychologist or another behavioral specialist in the school, or maybe it's contracted through the school, right? But this is something that can be used and done directly within Review360. And so you're able to document it right in the platform. And then what you can do once an FBA is done is you can create a behavior intervention plan that's tied to the FBA so that it all kind of stays together in this nice little package. Review360 also has a Token Academy component to it. Token Academy is a behavioral management system for those who aren't familiar with it. It's used to reinforce desired behaviors through the use of tokens. Okay, so these tokens can be later exchanged for rewards or privileges depending on how it's being used within a system. I personally use a token economy system with my own kiddos at home. But you can track students' tokens directly in the platform. So you can do this at a student-by-student basis. You can do this for whole classrooms. This is good for school-wide positive behavior interventions and supports. It's also good for classroom program points. So it can be used either way here in Review360. Review360 also has a school walkthrough component of it. And we'll oftentimes say, right, the most important thing is to implement with fidelity on Review360, right? So we create a plan and then we execute on the plan and then we look at the data and adjust our plan, right? Because most times we've got to make some adjustments there. And so the school walkthrough, what that helps you do, it helps the administrators perform a walkthrough to gather current data on how their staff is implementing school rules, procedures, and interacting with others. And so this is just another way for the administrators to go through and document what's being done, maybe what's working, what's not working. Just another tool in the toolbox, if you will. So next I'm going to jump over here to universal screeners. In just a moment, I'm going to look at the Q&A and answer any questions that we might have. So one of the questions folks have is, are we going to highlight academic progress plans as well? So in Review360, we do have an academic progress plan, but it's different from like something like AIMSWeb Plus, if you're familiar with AIMSWeb Plus, where you benchmark an academic skill and then you can progress monitor on that specific academic skill. In Review360, our academic plan is more a behavioral academic plan. So what I mean by that is, did Lori come to class prepared? Did Lori do my homework, right? So am I doing things to be successful academically, right? More from a behavioral perspective. Okay, I'm going to transition, if there's no other questions, I'm not seeing any right now, to our universal screeners and just cover a little bit about the various universal screeners that are available in Review360. Before I do, let's just talk for a quick second about why screen for behavior. So just like with academics, early identification matters in behavior, right? And this is because oftentimes things like internalizing behaviors are overlooked because we can't always see them like we can with externalizing behaviors, right? Universal screening also provides universal access, right? So when students today are being referred for services, right, why are they being referred for services? Is it because they're having challenges in the classroom, right? Conducting a universal screening process will help capture maybe some of the kiddos that you're missing, but it also just provides, right, like a benchmark for all of your kiddos, right? It's also recommended by various government commissions, federal laws, and national and international organizations, okay? According to EdWeek, they published a study a few years ago now, it was in 2020, only 20% of schools screen for mental health and behavior. And while I believe that that number has increased over the last several years, there's still a large number of schools and districts that aren't screening for for mental health or behavioral concerns. And sometimes the reason we hear the why for that, and it's interesting, and sometimes it's because schools are concerned about the what's next piece, right? So if I screen for behavior, I've got to do something with that data. And we kind of already talked about that. Okay, so if we screen, what can you do with that data in Review 360? So we covered a lot of that already, and happy to dive deeper into some of those questions again, or if there folks have questions on that. But Review 360 is the MTSS solution for all of it, right? You can screen and then you can get the data and you can do something with that data, right? And we provide a path for students who are identified as at risk there, okay? Sometimes we have customers who find that it's not right. They do a universal screener and they have a large percentage of their student population that is at risk, right? And so they, instead of going down to the individual level initially, they look at it a little bit higher level, more aggregated, right? And they can say at an aggregated level, what can we do to move the needle? Maybe we've got some bullying challenges. Maybe we have some um, relationship challenges, right? And so are there programs that we can implement system-wide to move that needle, right? So then that way you can start moving the needle and then focus on the kiddos that are most at risk, okay? So in Review 360, we have 4 main universal screeners. And so there's the BASC-3. BASC we talked just a little bit about already. The BASC-3 BASC is a nationally normed assessment. It identifies internalizing and externalizing behavior concerns. And it leads to the BASC, again, which is used as that broadband assessment in that more clinical or diagnoses space for ADHD or autism or other kinds of concerns. There's also the BASC SWSS. This is a social wellness skills system. This is a criterion referenced universal screener. National norms are expected soon, but currently it is only criterion referenced. And it assesses the 5 CASEL domains plus classroom readiness. So it looks at social awareness, self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and then that classroom readiness. There's also a skill builder component to the BASC SWSS, and that skill builder is to help build students' social wellness skills, okay? It is something that can be done individually, so students can do the activities on their own, but it's also something that can be led at a classroom level, okay? Then there is the SSIS SEL. That is a SEL system. It is nationally normed and it is also criterion referenced. There are several different screeners and assessments as part of the SSIS SEL product family. But at a high level, it assesses the 5 CASEL domains plus motivation to learn, okay? In addition, one of the components also assesses the emotional behavior concern items as well, okay? There's also an intervention component with the SSIS SEL, and that intervention component is a class-wide intervention program that is teacher-led. It's a Tier 1 program, and then supplementary, there is a Tier 2 and Tier 3 program that comes included as well. And then, of course, there's the Shaywitz dyslexia screen that is available to be purchased and used through Review 360 as well. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that screener, it is a screener that's used to identify students who might be at risk for dyslexia. So checking on time, I'm doing okay so far, and I don't see a lot of questions, so I'm gonna dive just a little bit into each of these screeners in a little bit more detail. The BAS3 Best was designed to allow a large number of students to be assessed for behavioral and emotional problems and strengths. On each form, there's a behavioral and emotional risk index that provides an overall indication for risk of having or developing behavioral or emotional problems or concerns, right? It is nationally normed, and there are validity indices that are included that are used to flag potentially unusual responses, right? So there is an indice that might flag if teachers are rating overly negative, or maybe they're inconsistent, right? And so we have indices that would help flag that. It can be used, there's a preschool form and a child and adolescent form for teachers. We have a parent form as well. And then there's a student self-report form that's used in grades 3 and above. And it comes in English and Spanish for both parents and students. Next we're gonna look at the Basque Social Wellness Skills System just a little bit. On your screen, you can see what that looks like in the platform. The Basque Social Wellness Skills System, again, we talked about there's norms coming soon. And this screener is used to identify developmental skills that are important to social wellness, right? So there's the 5 CASEL domains, and then there's also the indice or the indicator for classroom readiness. The scores that are provided, it provides an overall level of proficiency. And then, of course, you can use those to work on the skill builder that is supplemental. Similar to the BAS, there are respondent forms for teacher, parent, and student. Same age ranges. So teacher, there's the K-12 form. Parents have the same grade ranges, and then the student self-report starts at grade 3, and it is available in English and Spanish as well. I'm going to flip just to show you what the skill builder units look like for the Basque SWSS. The design of it is to support teachers in teaching of social wellness skills, okay? So it is available to be done self-guided and self-paced, but teachers can also like lead the classroom through one of the exercises. So the way that this appears in the platform today is as a PDF, and it is being converted to more of an interactive experience for students that we're expecting to release here this fall. Okay, there's a variety of sections that students go through on their journey. There's learning goals. There's an activity for each lesson, and then there's this overarching kind of admire the view, right? So then reflect on kind of what you just went through. There's 10 skill units, which have 3 exercises for each unit, right? So there's 30 total skill units included as part of the intervention component. So looking at the SSIS SEL just a little bit more in depth, I'm going to pull up on the screen what the full product family looks like so you can take a quick peek of this. So in the product family, we have the universal screener, which is the SSIS SEL brief plus mental health scales. Then there's a progress monitoring component. There's the diagnostic assessment and then the intervention. And these all are fully aligned assessments that can be looked at across the family, okay? So I'll leave this up for y'all. Feel free to take a screenshot of it as well if it's something that you're interested in looking at a little bit more in depth here. I'm also going to show you here in just a minute A couple of other items. I just want to go over to the chat quick to see if there's any if there's any questions that we're waiting to get answered. Not seeing anything, but again, if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat. I'm going to show you here quickly. I want to just give you a quick overview of the class-wide intervention program for the SSIS. So the class-wide intervention program, there's two different components to it. There's the class-wide intervention program and then the class-wide intervention program tier 2. So we have two components to it. There's 44 lessons in the class-wide intervention program that's used at the tier 1 and tier 2 students. Each lesson is 20 to 30 minutes, and it follows that tell, show, do, practice framework, okay? It's also aligned with all of the screeners and assessment components. So on the reports, when you look at the report, you can identify at an aggregated class level which component or which lesson in the tier 1 program that would benefit that group of students the most. So we identify for you which lesson you might benefit from in a particular classroom. Our tier 2 program focuses on social emotional life skills. This tier 2 program is typically used with individuals or smaller groups of students. And that it's used for typically for students who are not progressing as expected in the tier 1 program. Okay. This creates a mini social supportive network of 4 groups of students. About 4 to 10 is as large as you would want to get the tier 2 groups. And the content is split into 3 different phases with specific content and expected outcomes for each, okay? It expands about 12 to 18 weeks to go through all of the phases. You certainly don't have to go through all of the phases, but they're available if needed. We have about 10 minutes or so left, and I want to highlight just a couple of things. We do have in our handout, there is a snapshot flyer that has a link to our subscription options and what's available for folks to take a peek at. I'll also throw up on our screen now, we have assessment consultants assigned to each specific state and area. And so these are the individuals that you all can work with one-on-one to talk about solutions if you're interested. And so feel free to reach out to one of them. And I'll throw up on this slide now. If you have questions or you're wanting to learn more or get some additional information, or you're wanting us to consult with you on potential needs or expansion or things that you'd like to do, feel free to give us a call or shoot us an email. We're happy to jump on the phone individually with y'all and talk about Review 360, what it can offer, and hear more about the things that your goals and the things that you would like to tackle as a school or a district, and we're happy to work through those with you and help make sure that we can build a solution that works best for your school or district. Review 360 does a lot, and oftentimes we say don't implement the whole thing right away. A phased approach is best with Review 360, so oftentimes we say, what are the 1 or 2 goals or things that you'd like to work on as a school or a district? And let's start there, and then we can build out the program afterwards, right? So we can start small and then grow to maximize your investment. So with that, are there any questions or things folks would like me to cover? Okay. So, yes, there is a Virginia representative. I will put the chart back up on the screen for you all. And maybe we can have one of my colleagues in the chat send you their email address directly so that you're able to shoot them a message here. Pricing, so pricing is, we do have pricing linked on the webinar handout, so you can click on that link here and you can see the subscriptions and the pricing, the price points. There are different packages for Review360s, and we're happy to talk through what might work best for your particular school or district or your goals. Again, oftentimes we say you don't have to start with the full suite, right? But start small. Let's start with like 1 or 2 goals, right? And then we can build out to make sure that you're maximizing your investment there. It's important to note, though, of course, that all of this is included in our subscriptions, right? So you won't have to add this feature, add that feature next year, increase costs. The cost is all wrapped up, okay? And then would like to see a little bit more about the progress monitoring tools? Absolutely. I will pull up our behavioral progress monitor plans quick again for you all to take a peek at. This is a list. We have 9 behavioral progress monitoring plans, and these plans are used for different purposes, right? So there's the behavior tracking plan, right, that can be used to track behaviors and target different objectives for a particular student, right? So maybe they don't follow the classroom expectations, or maybe there's something very specific you want them to improve upon. That's a behavior tracking plan that you can use. There's also another example is the academic progress plan. These objectives are academic based, but separated by subject level and or grade, right? So maybe you have a student that doesn't come to school prepared for gym class, right? And so one of the things you want to track is, do they have all their gear ready for gym class? Or maybe they don't complete their homework assignments on time, and so maybe you want to track homework completion, right? And track those kinds of objectives. And so you would do something like that in the academic progress plan. All right. Any other questions or things folks would like me to answer live for you today? So there's a question about considering purchasing the Basque Best screener for students. This would be their first purchase of the Basque Best. And also purchase, or would we purchase the Bass Best and then also purchase Review360? So you can do this, Jordan, 2 different ways. You can purchase the Bass Best and just do universal screening and say, okay, for step 1, we're going to do universal screening next year, right? And we're going to give it a go. We're going to universally screen, and then we're going to look at the data and see what the results tell us. So you can do that singularly. And so you can buy the Best universal screeners for students, parents, teachers, whoever you want to fill out the universal screener. And you don't have to purchase what I call like the core Review360 subscription, right? So you can separate those. If you want to start with universal screening, you can start there. And then kind of get your feet under you, see how it goes, and then decide, okay, so now that we've screened, now what are we going to do with the data, right? So then your next step could be the what's next component, right? So that's that phased implementation that I was talking a little bit about, where you start with one thing, Let's get familiar with the platform. Let's go through the system one time, right? And then maybe in next January, a year from now, you might say, okay, we've got done the universal screening, but now we want to do something with that data. And so then we can help build that what's next piece for you if that's something you're interested. So you don't have to purchase universal screening and the core Review 360 pieces. You can purchase those independently, and our assessment consultants can help you come up with a solution that would work best for you. And then I know we have just a couple more minutes, but I'm not seeing any more questions in the Q&A. Sure. So I'm happy to share some more information on the SSIS, the SEL, the Classified Intervention Program. And so I'll follow up with you if you'd like to provide some additional context and information specific to that program. We're happy to provide an example lesson for you if it's something that you're interested in looking at, and we can get that over to you if you'd like. Any other questions before we adjourn? Okay. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I'm going to scroll on my slides here just another minute just to get y'all to our contact, to give you our contact information one more time. So on your screen, we have our support group. Feel free to reach out to them for ordering and technical support questions. And then you can use that phone number and they can always route you to your assessment consultant as well. Also feel free to shoot us an email and we're happy to get you over to your assessment consultant if you haven't worked with them yet. And then that way we can work on a solution that works best for you and your district. But with that, thank you for joining. Please don't be a stranger. Let us know if you have any questions. We're always here to help.